Well, good morning. Happy Saturday. I'm bringing you guys in a little bit late. They had a Pinsetter that was intermittently failing to cycle. So we did the usual. We looked at the ball detect. That was good. We opened the circuit box cover up. The cycle relay in the time delay module is good. And then we watched the cycle solenoid operate, and we saw that that was struggling. It's not struggling anymore. Let's make it a little more quiet in here. So what we did on the cycle solenoid is we actually adjusted the height of the cycle solenoid. We checked this at 180. We want to, well, here, let's hop around up front. I only brought one flashlight with me, so let me see if we can finagle a spot here that's going to work for us. So we are at 180. I stopped the machine at 180. I'm going to pull up on the cycle solenoid plunger. We have a little gap there. 3/16. This is a little under. This is more like 1/8. What they had was these adjuster screws. They're slotted. This plate is slotted. This was all the way up. What we need to know is that more up does not equal more pull force. It can actually hinder your machine's ability to cycle properly, which is what we were seeing here. So we are good here. I brought you guys in. Well, I was just tripping the ball detect beam and looking for other problems. I haven't seen it fail to cycle once after making the solenoid adjustment. So that tells me we were onto something with that. So we're just blocking the ball detect beam and watching it cycle over and over and over again, waiting for it to fail. And so far it hasn't, so we should be in good shape here. You guys remember a couple weeks ago with the noisiest clutch in the world? Well, we've got some great news. New worm shaft assembly, new yoke, clutch lever support kit, clutch shoes. We're going to slow it down to jetback speed. We've got an oil seal clutch kit and brand new clutch discs. The only thing that they don't have is the cone. We have a couple used ones here. This one, it's a little thin, but it looks like it's in great shape. This one is a little thicker, but it looks like it's been living at the bottom of the ocean for a couple of years. The one variable that we don't know is what the cone out there looks like, if it's going to be in halfway usable condition. I don't think that it is, which is why I've asked them to order all of these parts so that we start with known good parts. We don't have any surprises taking it apart. No, do we have this? Do we have that? I realize it's a big investment, right? This is probably the most they've spent on a parts order in one single order for a long time. But the thought process or the idea is that we'll take everything out of that machine. We'll examine it, we'll clean it. If we need to order bearings, we'll order bearings. If we need to order a worm shaft, we'll order just the worm shaft. You know, whatever we need to take all the parts that come out into a good spare to go into another machine. Because right now they don't have that. So we're going to focus on the worm shaft and the clutch today primarily. If we've got time, we're going to swap that motor sheave out for the jetback speed, so this one's not running full A2 anymore. It's just way too fast. What we don't know is if we have an appropriate belt combination for that new motor sheave. They've got some belts on the wall here. We might get lucky and find the right combo, but we're not guaranteed. We are guaranteed to be able to take care of this noise. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to trip the clutch. I'm going to do this at 270 degrees. Or you could do it at like 90 degrees. on a strike, that's fine too. Either way. Right about there. We're a little high. Let's back it down just a little bit. Yeah, good enough. Did you see it stall out right there? It had a pause. Yeah. Keyway on the bronze gear needs to be replaced. Well, the worm wheel needs to be replaced. The keyway on the shaft has worn a bad spot in the worm wheel, the worm gear. These older worm gears were solid bronze. The new ones have like a steel hub, and then just the teeth on the outside are bronze. And then we're gonna take our motor to elevator and our motor to gearbox belts off. Just roll that off. We're gonna just set those aside right there out of the way. We've got our jam nut off of the end of the worm shaft. We're going to, what I like to do, this is how I do it. Let's do a quick overview. I'm gonna pull this shaft out, and I'm gonna pull this shaft out if I can. I'm going to remove this nut, and I'm gonna take this whole thing off, kind of as one piece. So your lower clutch lever, upper clutch lever, your yoke, your disc, your clutch shoes, your pulley disc, and your cone are all gonna kind of slide off as one piece. So I got the top shaft out really easy. The bottom shaft, I'm encountering a bind. So what I'm gonna do, I took the snap ring and flat washer off this side. I'm gonna file this down if it's got some burrs on it, and we're just gonna go the opposite direction out towards the cross conveyor. Just like that. That was a little awkward, but yeah, she's out. We're gonna file it up real good, make sure we don't have any more burrs on it. So upper and lower shaft, I dropped it, damn it. So that's the last piece left. We're gonna unthread that and yank this whole thing off. For this, I like to use a 1 1/8 socket, but I will need two hands. I gotta hold our clutch pulley and cone in place while I manipulate the flange nut. All right, our flange nut is off. Let's see what the carnage is. Yeah, it's pretty bad. See if I can finagle some flashlights here real quick. Not working as I had hoped it would be. Definitely getting a little thin. Focus. Yeah, definitely got some pretty bad wear. I'm sure the clutch discs are probably looking equally gross. So let's open up this clutch pack. Well, missing drive pin. We're wore down. The rivets have actually cut a groove into the cone. Bearing looks excessively dry. Can you hear it? Yeah, you could probably repack it, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, rivets on both sides. Groove in the drive disc. Well, we're not down to the rivets there. Almost. Which means maybe our clutch shoes can be saved. No, never mind. I turn it over. It's a big groove right in there. Could we maybe like flip them 180 and put the good face forward? Maybe. I don't know. Clutch shoes aren't that expensive, right? Other side. Yeah, same thing. Well, so we need to reuse this. We need to reuse our 5-inch, whatever, 5 1/4 bolt. We're gonna remove that pin because we're gonna reuse this and the pin. But yeah, I was hoping that would be in a little bit better shape, but it's not. Well, that's okay. We have a bunch of new parts and one sort of halfway decent clutch cone. Now that we have the rest of our clutch pack off, let's look at our spline in here. Full of metal dust. Yeah, it's bad. Can you see how thin it's getting through here? Let me find a flat edge. Yeah, kind of in the shadows, but you can see a gap in there. Yeah, not good. So the next step is going to be, we need to find a lock pin or a lock tab. See, hold on. Flashlight was giving me all kinds of glare. Right there. So we're gonna peel it up with a baby flathead screwdriver, and then we'll take our worm shaft nut off, and then we can take our bearing retainer off, and then we'll pull the worm shaft out, and then we'll start the process of reassembly. So we got our tab pulled out of the way. We got our spline nut retaining tool. We got our spline nut wrench. Ew, yeah, look at all that free play. Ew, wow. Crazy. So we need 1 1/8 inch wrench and a second hand to hold this in place. So I'm gonna set you down for a sec. We've got our nut, our lock washer, our spring retainer off. The next step, we need to locate the bolt heads for our bearing retainer. One buried here. There should be 3 more somewhere in the crust. We'll wipe it down real quick and so we can see what we're doing. Yeah, it's a little better. At least we can see the bolts now. So we're just gonna pull these 4 bolts out, take the plate out, and then I'm gonna unthread our worm shaft and we're gonna eject it from the rear of the machine. All right, bearing retainer is coming out. Making a big pile of stuff over here. So, if anybody's curious, the big reason I like to do these at 270 is that I can thread this thing out. I don't have to worry about anything shifting, right? Gravity is holding everything in place. And if I needed to, I can push down on the crank arm. And, well, not yet. But if I needed to, I could push down on the crank arm and just pop this thing right out the back of the machine. Fortunately, we don't have to. But I am going to have to set you guys down so that I don't spill some gearbox oil all over the place. Well, that's kind of shiny-ish. It is time for a new oil seal. We are going to gently tap that in. I like to use a block of wood so that I don't inadvertently warp the seal as I'm installing it. Unfortunately, again, this is going to require 2 hands. So if you look, it's the outside of the oil seal is coated with a material that is supposed to help fill the gaps and prevent oil from leaking between the seal and the bearing plate. Let's look in here close. This is where things matter. So we're in, I believe, the 21,000 and up serial number range. We should be using the rubber gasket. we found a bunch of paper shim gaskets in there. And it worked just fine. But technically, I believe we are at 21,000 and up for this particular machine. Is it really a big deal? No, it's not. But just something to bear in mind, depending on what vintage your machine is, you're gonna have to do a couple of different steps or shim a different way. Here are some part numbers if you are looking for things individually. I don't recommend it. I would just recommend ordering this, and that way you get a new nut, a new lock washer, a new spacer, a new oil seal, a new O-ring, and whatever combination of shims and gaskets you want to use. Oh, look at that. Let's unwrap it. It's Christmas. Wow, that's shiny. You know, I've been doing this for a long time and I've never actually ordered a brand new worm shaft. Wow, that's a first. Cool. I didn't know it came with an oil seal, a rubber gasket, and some paper shims. Neat. Well, now they have extras, because I'm sure we'll be doing this again soon. Like salt and pepper, right? Push it real good. They'll just walk in and out. 270, man. I don't know why everybody else isn't doing it that way, but oh, I was a little bit off. We're 21,581. So for this vintage, we're going to use shims, paper gaskets, and we're going to add them until the shim surface is flush with the bearings. I have one too many on here. That feels really good. Cool. Okay. Another thing that we'll call it a lesson learned the hard way. You want to put some lube on the oil seal before you install it, because you run the risk of burning up that rubber with the shaft turning before the oil can wick from the gearbox to the worm shaft bearings and to the oil seal. We have some aerosol grease here. It's, you know, it's not my favorite, but will it work? Yeah, it'll work. So we're gonna go ahead and coat that. As soon as we get that on, then we'll coat the spline, and then we'll start bringing our new parts in. Now that we've got the bearing retainer installed and tightened down, we want to check the worm shaft for end play. We want to make sure that we don't have any slop in there. So we can turn it one way, pressure, turn it the other way, pressure. We're not moving in and out. So we're shimmed really well here. This is good. I don't know why I won't focus. I've already got the O-ring in there. I put that on before I put the bearing retainer in. But we're ready for our spacer. If you look at this, one edge is beveled. One edge is flat. That beveled edge goes in towards the gearbox. Then we're gonna bring in our spring retainer. I'm gonna rotate until I find our keyway right here. Star washer's coming in. You see that tab pointing towards the gearbox? That needs to line up in the keyway. And then lastly is going to be our nut. Sometimes you can thread these on pretty easily by hand. sometimes they require the alignment tool. Well, let's go ahead and do that, just so we're not kind of fiddle farting around here. Get in there. What am I doing wrong? Shapes are hard. Shapes are difficult. It's a little tight. Hold on. I needed some extra fingers to help line that up. But this should theoretically help us line our threads up between the nut and the worm shaft. Theoretically. Is it working? No. Failure. Failure is always an option. There we go. I got it. I got it. I will need 2 hands. These new threads are still just a little bit stiff. So I'll bring you back in just a sec. Nope, that's the wrong end. So let's crank it down. I've got the spline tool just resting in that sheave. We don't need a lot of torque. We're just making sure everything is seated, and then a little bit more. Let's spin this around. Let's see if we have a tab that's gonna line up. That one's pretty close. That one might be a winner right there. So what we're gonna do, if I can get my fingers out of the light, we're gonna take a punch or a flat blade screwdriver. We're just gonna fold it over into that groove. It's gonna lock it in place. So I'm gonna clock that at 12 o'clock, dead overhead. Just come in with a screwdriver and punch it down. Just like that. See how we're punched down? Now the nut is locked into position. It can't inadvertently unthread. We're at a pretty decent stopping point here to take a little bit of a break. I need to go back to the workshop, and we're gonna transfer some of these parts over into the new parts that are in the workshop. And I would appreciate being able to stand up straight again for just a couple minutes. This is where the real magic happens. Nice and shiny. So I went ahead, well, I wasn't getting any video, but we've checked the shafts for burrs, we've filed them down, we've checked that shaft for burrs, filed it down, checked the bushings, transferred our related parts over, we degreased everything and ran it quickly through the wire wheel. It's looking pretty good so far. The next step, we kind of took a break there, huh? We're gonna grease our spline. We're gonna put our spring on. We're gonna put our clutch pack together, and then we're gonna slide it all on and then do some adjustments. So let's look at these clutch shoes. These are brand new, never been used. They look really, really good. There are a few different versions of clutch shoes on the market. They make, I think, a 30,000 thicker, and I want to say maybe like a 60,000 thicker. On those units, you'll see a 3 or a 6 stamped on this flat part. That lets you know that they are oversized. Sometimes people like to use those to make up for the loss of clutch material thickness over time. We're not going to do that here. We've got literally brand new out of the box drive disc, pulley, gently used cone, but it's still in good shape. We're going to lube the pins on the yoke. We're going to put our shoes on, and then we're going to slip our drive disc and our clutch pack into the yoke. It's going to look a little something like this. just like that. And then once we lift it up, we can rotate that into position. Just like that. I didn't get it on camera because, you know, I needed two hands and all, but I take the whole thing and I kind of come in at an angle like this and scoop the front edge of that drive disc right over the tail of the worm shaft. And that gives you just enough room to slide the whole thing on there in one piece. Then you line your spline up between your drive disc and the spline on the shaft. You're able to push it in a little bit. You'll feel it bump on your cone. Then you take some time, you get that spline lined up also, and then you can push in a little more. Thread your flange nut on. Now everything's splined in there. Your clutch sandwich is being held together. We're just gonna take our 1 1/8 deep socket and just thread it in a little bit. Once we get more that way, we'll have enough slack to start putting our upper and lower pins back in. Our preliminary adjustment set point is going to be running this nut down until we have a gap of about 1/16 between the drive disc and our bearing retainer plate. This is easier to see on this style because we have this old A style bearing retainer plate. The newer bearing retainer plates are small metal plates that bolt in right back there. They're smaller than the diameter, the opening of this drive disc. We're going to start with our top shaft. Let's get that started in there. We're going to bring in a brand new clutch lever support kit. We want to get it started. Just about 1/4 of an inch sticking out there. I have to break open the hardware pack. I'm going to need two hands real quick. I'm not sure if I can do this one-handed. It's a bit of a challenge, but we're going to try to flex the spring in there and then push our shaft in. Yeah, easier said than done. Let me set you guys down. I need a second hand to finagle the top pin in. So we've got our spring, our top pin. The next thing we need to do is bring in our adjuster screw. We'll do that in a minute. Let's get the bottom pin set in first. I'm gonna set this adjuster screw. We're kind of halfway. Upper pin is in, lower pin is in, snap rings are on, the spring on the clutch cam follower is on. Let's grab our jam nut. So what I've done is I've reset the clutch. I relatched there, sorry, words, and I lifted up and relatched the clutch lever. So at this point, we've got a little bit of a gap here. We're gonna need a little bit bigger of a gap. Why? Because this gap is too small, ever so slightly. So at this position, if we need to increase this gap, that lower threaded rod, we're going to unthread that from the pin. We're gonna increase this gap ever so slightly. Doesn't need a whole lot. So for this style clutch bearing retainer, yeah, oh yeah, by the way, shameless promotion here. We want business card or credit card thick. Really, that's what we're looking for. So now that we've got our lower threaded rod length set, we need to adjust our jam nuts for our spring and our lower clutch yoke pivot. So what I like to do, I'm going to trip the clutch. Let me zoom in here. We want to just tighten that jam nut until it touches the pivot. and then we're going to tighten the jam nut into the other nut, and then we're good. So our jam nuts are jammed. We are not in focus, but yeah, I'm not in a bind here, right? I'm just taking all the slack out of the spring on the backside. So this is good. We're gonna get our belts on. We're going to reset the clutch again. That gap is huge now, right? So we do our flange nut for our cone gap here. I'm gonna go a little bit on the big side because this thing is running full A2 speed. So there's a chance that because that higher speed that the clutch is being driven, that the clutch will actually coast a little bit further than something that would be running jet back or A speed. Doesn't that look nice? Let's take a picture for the thumbnail, huh? We're gonna take just a couple minutes here to clean off the top of the work platforms so we don't have anything that falls into a running machine. So our platform's clear. I'm gonna take another couple of moments to prime up our oil can here. We're gonna lube all of our pivot points. Might as well hit the clutch cycle linkage as well while we're here, right? The breaker's back on, the machine's plugged back in. Let's turn it on and see what we can see. Look at that. 270 went to home. We're still stopping a little late. We definitely don't need that much lift on our clutch support. Go ahead and thread that back down. Small gap. You can't see, my fingers are in the way. Small gap between the support plate and the lever. Try it again. Pretty good. Probably don't even need that. Probably don't even need a support kit with all brand new parts. That's beautiful. She is whisper quiet now. You can really hear that pit cushion linkage screaming. I'm waiting for pins. 180. Yeah, this is good. Again. I'm very happy with this. Since we are stopping just a hair later than 0, I'm gonna break that jam nut free. I'm gonna increase that gap just a teeny tiny bit. Yep, one more time. Perfect. So that all looks good. I gotta clean my camera lenses again too, but phase 2. We're gonna see if we can pop that sheave off of the motor and replace it with jetback speed. So we got her swapped out. It was pretty easy. Pry bar slid it right off. It wasn't all chowdered up. So yeah, we're good. We got a we're gonna get our set screws jammed in here, and belt alignment looks pretty good. This is an aftermarket motor. This is one of the Harbor Freight specials, so it doesn't exactly line up where an OEM motor would, but we've done a pretty good job here. We need to see if we can find a shorter belt here. We got a lot to choose from. Maybe we'll get lucky. If not, we'll end up putting the old one back on. That took a little bit of scrounging, but I did manage to find an A63 belt. That way we only have to move the motor that way just a fraction of an inch. It's not going to really interfere with our motor to elevator belt adjustment. Success! We have a jetback speed motor sheave. Let's turn, pardon me, I got the hiccup. Let's turn it on. Let's double check our clutch adjustment, because it may be different now that we're running a slower input speed on our worm shaft. No, that's good. That's really good. Let's watch it a couple more times. Perfect. That's perfect. That's good. I'm really happy with this. It's not like wham, 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 wham. It's definitely not creepy speed, right? But I don't think it needs to be. Personal opinion. Success. Great success. We're done here. Been here for a while. I'm hungry. I'm gonna go home, eat some lunch, take a nap.